The Genesis account is written to be taken literally. The world was created in 6 literal, 24-hour days about 6,000 years ago. There is no gap or pre-Adamic creation. There was no death until Adam sinned. Romans 5:12, Wherefore, as by one man sin entered into the world, and death by sin, and so death passed upon all men, for that all have sinned. In Ezekiel 28:13 and 15 we read, Thou hast been in Eden the garden of God. 15, Thou was perfect in thy ways from the day that thou was created, till iniquity was found in thee. Genesis 1:31 tells us everything was good at the end of the creation week, therefore Satan had not fallen yet. So, when did Satan fell? Here are the events as they are recorded in the book of Genesis. In Genesis chapter 3, we can read the conversation between the serpent and Eve. Lucifer, which is the one using the serpent as a mouthpiece, Revelation 12:9, deceived Eve into eating the fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. This is the tree that God has forbidden them from eating. In Genesis chapter 3 verse 6 we read, And when the woman saw that the tree was good for food, and that it was pleasant to the eyes, and a tree to be desired to make one wise, she took of the fruit thereof, and did eat, and gave also unto her husband with her, and he did eat. In verse 8 we read, And they heard the voice of the Lord God, walking in the garden in the cool of the day, and Adam and his wife hid themselves from the presence of the Lord God, amongst the trees of the garden. This is Jesus who they heard walking in the cool of the day. And how do I know it was Jesus walking? If you read carefully in the verse, it says, They heard the voice of the Lord God walking in the garden. You can swap the voice for the word and now you can read, They heard the word of the Lord God. The same as John 1:1, The Word was with God and the Word was God. Now that we know who did what, we can see how Jesus dealt with each one. Jesus first went to Adam. Adam passed the blame to Eve, who in turn passed the blame to the serpent. The serpent received his punishment, Genesis 3:14, And the Lord God said unto the serpent, Because thou hast done this, thou art cursed above all cattle, and above every beast of the field, upon thy belly shalt thou go, and dust shalt thou eat all the days of thy life. Next was Eve, Genesis 3:16, Unto the woman he said, I will greatly multiply thy sorrow and thy conception, in sorrow thou shalt bring forth children, and thy desire shall be to thy husband, and he shall rule over thee. I made a video about Genesis 3:16, And thy desire shall be to thy husband, and he shall rule over thee. You can find a link on the description box. Now was the turn for Adam, Genesis 3:17, And unto Adam he said, Because thou hast hearkened unto the voice of thy wife, and hast eaten of the tree, of which I commanded thee, saying, Thou shalt not eat of it, cursed is the ground for thy sake. For dust thou art, and unto dust shalt thou return. There is one person missing. Lucifer. Most likely Lucifer saw what was coming and left. Lucifer's pride, wisdom, and beauty corrupted his knowledge of God. Lucifer thought he could hide from God. He retreated to a place where he thought he was safe from judgment, heaven. In heaven, Lucifer comes face to face with the first person of the Trinity, God the Father. Remember, Jesus was on earth with Adam and Eve. In Ezekiel 28, we read the events that followed. Verse 13, Thou hast been in Eden the garden of God. Verse 15, Thou was perfect in thy ways from the day that thou was created, till iniquity was found in thee. Verse 16, By the multitude of thy merchandise they have filled the midst of thee with violence, and thou hast sinned, therefore I will cast thee as profane out of the mountain of God, and I will destroy thee, O covering cherub, from the midst of the stones of fire. This is the first act of sin committed. Lucifer sinned against God when he deceived Eve into disobeying God. In the following verse, we find out why he did it and his punishment. Verse 17, Thine heart was lifted up because of thy beauty, thou hast corrupted thy wisdom by reason of thy brightness, I will cast thee to the ground, I will lay thee before kings, that they may behold thee. In this verse we find God cast Lucifer to the ground. This is what Jesus saw in Luke 10:18, I beheld Satan as lightning fall from heaven. And why cast Satan to earth? When Adam and Eve disobeyed God, they lost this dominion to Satan. In Romans 6:16, we read, Know ye not, that to whom ye yield yourselves servants to obey, his servants ye are to whom ye obey, whether of sin unto death, or of obedience unto righteousness. In this verse Paul is saying, we are a servant to whom we obey. Now Satan is the ruler of this earth. In 2 Corinthians 4, Satan is called the god of this world. This is one of the reasons why God cursed the ground. Remember in Genesis 3:17, Cursed is the ground for thy sake. This is so we don't love the creation rather than the Creator. And now you know when did Satan fall, He fell on the same day that Adam and Eve fell. He was the last one but punish, he was. By now you probably have more questions. Why God allowed Satan to tempt Eve? And why did God put the tree of knowledge of good and evil in the garden? These are good questions that I will cover on another video. If you like this video, please leave a comment on the comment section below. I would like to hear your thoughts. Thank you. And don't forget to share, like, and subscribe.